welcome to the Kate Show. With me today is Russ Krauch. How's it going, man?
Could be worse.
Okay. So, do you have any stories for us about Wally and the Weirdos?
Well, one of the places we used to play was the Wildwood Country Club in Woodlawn. And a lot of bands say that when they get into playing music, they do it for the girls. Wally and the Weirdos did it for the free drinks. The official Wildwood policy was 1 drink per set, but since we were pretty popular there, we got around that, and we said that as far as we were concerned, 1 song was a set. So we got about 35, 40 drinks each a night, and that's how we got around that at Wildwood. Another favorite story of mine is the day after Lee Dahl took off all his clothes on stage. Lee Dahl, for those of you that don't know, is the sort of master of ceremonies of Lee Dahl Film Productions, which is the reason why we're all here. Anyway, one night Lee decided to surprise us all, and he took off all of his clothes live on stage. I think there's a picture of it somewhere. If I know the folks at Lee Dahl Film Productions well enough, there'll be a shot of it in the corner right there at some point, but if they can find it. But anyway, the only thing he had on there was some little G-string with a leopard print on it. And needless to say, this got a pretty big reaction. And a few weeks later, we played at Wildwood again, and he did the same thing. The day after that, we went back up to pick up some of our equipment, and I was sitting at the bar having a drink, and this girl walks up, and she says, "Are you and Wally and the Weirdos?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Are you the guy that took off all your clothes last night?" I said, "No, that wasn't me, that was somebody else." And she said, "Well, I'm glad to hear it wasn't you," because I felt real sorry for that guy. And that was the last time he took off all his clothes after I told him about that.
So who is Wally?
There was no Wally. Wally was just a figment of our imagination. Sometimes we would go in and the club owner would say, "All right, which one of you guys is Wally?" Well, Wally's not here, but don't worry, we'll make up for it.
So where did the band rehearse?
The main rehearsal spot was Bob Clark's house in Woodlawn on Windsor Mill Road, which I didn't find out till years later was also the same house that my mother grew up in.
Wow.
When up until about the time she was 6 years old.
Wow.
And I didn't find out about that until a long time after. And she showed me a picture of the house that was taken in like 1940 or something like that. And it was about the only house on the road. But so anyway, that was there's no historical plaque on that house. And until recently, it was still in the Clark family. So who knows what's going to happen to it now.
That's interesting. So how did Wally and the Weirdos begin?
The origins of Wally and the Weirdos go back to high school days, and Mike Barton, my childhood friend, who for the purposes of this interview will now be referred to as Sid.
Okay.
That was what everybody called him. Anyway, Sid and I always wanted to be in a band, and right after I got out of high school, I went into the Army. And the plan was, when I get out of the Army, we're going to get a band together. So anyway, to make a long story short, I got out of the Army, and Sid and I put a band together, and we called it the Monkey Hand Band. And the Monkey Hand Band played a few shows, but it didn't last too long. Sid and I decided if we were going to take this to the next level, we were going to have to get a couple of guys that really knew what they were doing. And it wasn't long after that that we met Lee and Jimmy Brown, and we formed a band called The Blokes, and we called it The Blokes because we all liked British invasion music. And The Blokes didn't last more than a few rehearsals. Compared to The Blokes, the Monkey Hand Band had an illustrious career. So we decided instead of looking for a bunch of guys, let's just find a drummer. It wasn't long after that we ran into Bob, who was somebody that we knew from high school, but his family moved to Westminster, so we hadn't seen him for a while. And we ran into him in a bar. And, "Oh, you guys want to be in a band? Yeah, sure. I'll do it, sure." And that was the beginning of it right there.
That's cool. So how would you describe the music that Wally and the Weirdos played?
Joe Vaccarino wrote a book called Baltimore Sounds, and he described this as new wave, neo-60s rock, and that would be about the best way to describe it.
And whose idea was it to have two lead singers in the band?
Lee's. That was Lee's idea because he wanted to be in the band.
Okay.
So he came up to me one day. I hadn't seen him for a while, and he says, "Can I be in the band?" And I said, "Well, come over to my place and we'll work on some stuff and we'll see how it goes." And things worked out, and bam, we had two lead singers. So that was all Lee's idea.
Can you describe your stage antics?
Well, Lee would like to take his clothes off, and we would do things like talk to members of the audience, and people would yell stuff back at us. There was a guy named Brad Johnson who used to come see us just to heckle us, and we would tell him to shut up and sit down, and you can hear him in some of the old tapes.
What do you like best about Wally and the Weirdos? Tell me right now. My breaks? When you guys take a break, that's the best part about the whole night.
People said they liked us because we were ourselves on stage. We weren't trying to be something that we weren't. That was why people came out to see us, because they knew they were seeing us.
Whose idea was it to market the band as the most terrible band ever?
Well, we never really marketed ourselves as the most terrible band ever. It was kind of a Mad Magazine, Alfred E. Newman, What Me Worry kind of a thing. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. We weren't sticklers for accuracy in Wally and the Weirdos. We didn't worry about playing the songs exactly. It was like, all right, here are the chord changes. Let's just do it, and that's how it came out.
Nice. So what did the public think of Wally and the Weirdos?
Most people that saw us liked us. Like I said, we weren't the most popular band in town, but we had a following in some quarters, particularly in the Woodlawn, Catonsville area. We didn't consider ourselves to be musicians so much as entertainers. If you came out and saw us, you were entertained. You saw a show. It was something that people talked about.
Why do you think the band didn't reach national success?
Well, one of the reasons for that was Sid. Sid was very frustrating to deal with. He was the ultimate one step forward, two steps back kind of a guy. He quit the band 7 or 8 times. Every time we had any kind of momentum and got something going, he quit. The famous story was that he quit one time to buy his wife a maternity bra, which is true. Another time, we had gone for a while without doing a show, and we finally got a break and opened up for another band and did really well. They liked us. The crowd liked us. We got an encore. The club wanted us back for more work, and his response to that was, "I quit." So we spent a lot of time trying to find replacements for him. And it was like, I think he took a perverse thrill in just throwing a wrench in the works. And he was like, "Yeah, I did it again. That's what they get for having me back." And that was just how he was. He was like that with everybody and everything. When we were kids, he'd get into trouble, and his old man would yell at him, and he would just get right up in his face. "Oh, I'm just going to do it again." And that was just the kind of a guy that he was. And the other reason I don't think we ever made it more than we did is because bands from Baltimore just didn't get signed. It's just, Baltimore's just, well, I don't know about now because I don't know what's going on now. But back then, it just wasn't a hot spot musically. If anybody from Baltimore made it, you had to go somewhere else. Those are the only two reasons I can think of.
What was your main role in Crunch and Clem production?
I was spinning right here, then I get off at night, I'll drink a 6-pack of beer, all the secrets.
I was the guy, well, in Crunch and Clem Productions, everybody did a little bit of everything. Sometimes we took turns filming, acting. If I had to pick a main role, it was the guy that wrote the scripts that they took and dissected and threw away all the parts, and then said, "All right, well, you got to come up with some more stuff." So I was the guy that did that.
That's interesting. So like quality control, like that kind of thing?
There was no quality control in Crunch and Clem Productions. There was a lot of heavy editing, though.
Okay. Like a lot of fix it and post. Not just fix it and post. Right?
Yeah, well, that was Dave's job.
So why did Wally and the Weirdos break up?
Well, it wasn't so much breaking up as we decided to we were kind of tired of doing live shows. We were all kind of, at that point, by this time we're talking about the end of 1984. And we were all tired of live shows to varying degrees. And I mean, even after we stopped, we still got together and played and even did some recording. So we got together one night and we said, well, you know, if we're going to stop doing live shows, how are we going to do it? And Sid, of course, he wanted to end it right there. That's it. I'm done selling my bass, you know. And I was like, well, if we're going to end it, let's take it through one more winter and then end it then. And Bob was like, he agreed with whoever was in the room. So we kind of compromised, and we did 2 more shows. And then at the end of 1984, we stopped. But it wasn't that we weren't tired of being friends. We were tired of being in the band. Sometimes when bands break up, the guys don't want to see each other because they're tired of dealing with each other. That wasn't the case with me, Bob, and Sid. We still, you know, continued a friendship and even got together from time to time.
What inspired you to write Three Stooges blues?
That was the only song that I wrote in high school that stood the test of time. I would sit there in archaeology class and sing that. How that came about was there used to be Captain Chesapeake on Channel 45, and he showed the Three Stooges every day. And he took it off the air, and I got really mad, and I sent him a letter. Hey, Captain C, you're a bum and you stink. You took the Three Stooges off the air. I was my senior year of high school when I sent Captain C this letter. And he read it on the air. And the next day I was a big celebrity because Captain C read my letter on the air. So that's how the Three Stooges blues came about.
Do you really hate cats?
Yes. Yes, I do. I hate cats. That's no lie. It's not goofing around. I used to share an apartment with a guy that had a cat, and he didn't take care of this cat at all, and the whole apartment just smelled like essence of cat, if you know what I mean. And the cat just got in the way, and that was where it just went off from there. So, yep, cats, don't like them, don't need them, don't want them around.
Now, sometimes you would change the lyrics in your song, I Hate Cats, to I Hate Bears. I'm going to hit them with a folding chair. And then sometimes you would change it to I Hate Beavers. Going to cut them up with a meat cleaver. What was all that about?
You've stumped me with the meat cleaver one. I don't remember that. But I do remember the bear one, and how that came about was I was usually the one that went out and bought a cat.
Okay.
See, back in those days, my expenses were never paid.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go out. Yes, I'm looking at you. Every show I had to go out and spend $10 and get a cat. And I was the one that did this. And one day, I forgot to do it or I ran out of time or whatever it was. And we didn't have a cat. And the guy who was Sid's replacement for a while, Bill Resnickow, we were rehearsing at his house, and his roommate had a stuffed bear. So we said, well, we'll just take this bear. He'll never miss it. And we took this guy's stuffed bear, and we went up on stage that night, and instead of I Hate Cats, we sang I Hate Bears. Well, Bill's roommate chose that night of all nights to come see us. He had never seen us before. And he came to see us, and we started tearing his bear up on stage. And he, my bear, my bear! It was great entertainment. This was the kind of thing that kept people coming back.
What gave you the idea to wear like flannel shirts over top of t-shirts that had slogans on them, and then like old looking jeans and army surplus clothes?
Well, that was just the way that Sid and I always dressed.
Uh-huh.
We dressed that way since high school. My fashion statement hasn't changed in 40-some years. The only reason I'm wearing a shirt with a collar today is because I was told I had to. And another reason was a lot of the guys that we liked, like John Fogerty or Neil Young, they wore plaid shirts on stage. So we just we took a cue from them. I mean, it changed a little bit as time went by. We sometimes we dressed up in other things, depending on where we were playing. Sometimes if we played downtown, we might have worn something else. But we started out in plaid, and we ended up in plaid.
Did you think of yourself as a style icon or anything
Nope.
back then?
Nope, we just did what we felt like doing.
So, yeah, because the way that you guys dressed ended up being the way that bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam dressed in the 90s. Did you notice that, or?
By the time the 90s came around, I wasn't paying any attention to rock music anymore. So all that just went right by me. And if I heard something like that on the radio, all those grunge bands, half of them sounded like Black Sabbath, and the other half of them sounded like Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And if I want to listen to somebody that sounds like Black Sabbath, I'll listen to Black Sabbath. If I want to listen to somebody that sounds like Neil Young, I'll listen to Neil Young. So the whole grunge thing just went over my head. I really didn't know anything about it.
Nice. What gave you the idea to use a distortion pedal and all? I mean, you used a pedal called the Big Muff?
Yes, I still have the official Wally and the Weirdos Big Muff.
Wow.
Too. I used the Big Muff because it let me make as much noise as I possibly could with the equipment that I had. We were a cheap band. We didn't have much money. I bought a Stratocaster because it was the only reasonably decent guitar I could afford. I bought a twin reverb amp because a friend of mine was selling one and he let me buy it on the installment plan. And I used the Big Muff just because it got a fuller, louder sound. I wasn't trying to sound like anything in particular. I was just trying for a fuller, louder sound.
I mean, you really have a distinct style of guitar playing. I really enjoy your guitar playing.
Kate, you're only saying that because you know it's true.
Your solos are they're very good, and they're like easily identifiable. I've heard your guitar playing on other songs that weren't Weirdos songs, and I'm like, is that Russ Krauch? And I'll look, and it is you. And so how did you come to develop that style?
A lot of trial and error. Most of those solos were mistakes.
Really?
And some of them were. I'm half of this interview is half kidding and half serious, but I mean some of them were mistakes that we kept in. It was just Be On Time Today was one where I just went in and I did 4 or 5 guitar parts and we kept them all in there. And Bill Pratt was like, "You can't do this. The megahertz on the compression will flirt with the brick limiting on the wall," or whatever it was. Just keep them all in there, Bill. Figure out a way. And he did it, and that was just how we did.
Yeah, the guitars on that song are awesome. They really are. And what inspired you to start playing guitar in the first place?
When I was in elementary school, I played clarinet in a school band. And then when I was about 14, I picked up an electric guitar, and that seemed to be the thing to do. It was like by that time, it was around 1970 or so. And the clarinet just seemed like old hat. And I got reasonably good at it pretty quick. And it wasn't so much that I really wanted to play the guitar. It was the only thing I was reasonably good at when I was growing up. So I just kept doing it.
That's neat. So, like, instead of playing sports and stuff
Right,
like that,
right.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, some guys were into sports, some guys were into cars, some guys were into picking up girls. I wasn't good at any of that, but I could play the guitar, so that was what I did.
Now, Wally and the Weirdos did some pretty obscure covers. Like, you did like a B-side of a Who single or something like that, and was that called Water?
Yeah,
Water.
Water was the B-side of Love Reign Over Me, which wasn't a big hit for the Who, so we chose the B-side.
How did you decide what songs to cover and all?
We just did the songs we liked to do. Lee liked the Animals, so we did a bunch of songs by the Animals. We were the only band, probably at that point, still doing songs by the Animals. So it was we didn't make too many. We made a few concessions to what was going on, but basically we just did what we wanted to do.
That's cool. So you did, because a lot of times they would be sped up versions of songs. How did that come about? I mean, did you consciously decide, like, we're going to play these songs like twice as fast?
No, that was Tommy. Tommy played everything 5 times as fast than it was supposed to be, and sometimes it was a real problem. Like we did a song called Animal Zoo, which is a song that we did probably at just about every show. And Animal Zoo starts out dun 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 dun, and it's just the guitar, and Tommy would come in, and he would just do that. And one time I said something to him about it. I said, "Man, you're really speeding these things up." And I thought he was going to hit me, but
wow,
that was just how it was. But yeah, that was why. It's Tommy. It's all Tommy's fault, speeding up. Otherwise, we would have done them at the right tempo.
And what music have you worked on since the Weirdos?
In 1997 or so, an album came out by a band called Future Sounds of London called Lifeform. It's kind of like an electronica album. And when I heard that just stopped me dead in my tracks, and I said, forget everything else. This is what I want to do now. And of course, how am I going to do it? And then not long after that was when I discovered you could make music on a computer. You could set a recording studio up on your computer without spending a fortune. So I recorded everything at home. And I've put out a couple of CDs. You can insert them into the corner now if you want. One's called Reise durch Europa, which is Journey Through Europe in German, and the other one's called For Duty and Humanity, and then I've done a few EPs and CD singles. I don't do full-length albums anymore. It's not worth the time and bother.
Yeah, I don't think that's popular now anyways. I think people are buying more singles and stuff like that.
Oh, they're not buying anything. They're listening to it, and the songs that you used to get $1 for, now you get a penny for it, and sometimes you don't even get the penny.
Right.
So,
yeah, sometimes it's like 3/10 of a penny or something.
So, that's it for me in putting stuff up on the internet. What's there is there, but for a penny, no, I'll keep it for myself.
So are you still making new electronica music and stuff?
The last thing I did was an EP called Welcome to the Fiery Pits of Hell. And that was about 2 years ago. Since then, I really haven't done much. Part of it's writer's block, part of it's just my work schedule. I just started I just picked up the guitar again for the first time in probably a good while, maybe not quite 2 years, but close to it.
Mm-hmm.
I just hadn't played in a while. And I just started playing again just like a few weeks ago.
What are you working on in the future? You have anything coming up?
Hopefully semi-retirement and then eventually death. That's the goal for right now. Oh, you mean musically? I don't know. If I feel the grand opus of the century might come, I'll do it. I still have everything set up and ready to go. If something hits me, I'll lay it down. But for right now, no, I'm in a state of flux.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week on The Kate Show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.